box arrived on a Thursday. It was heavier than I expected. Cedarwood, old but polished, wrapped in twine with no return address. Only my name, handwritten in Aunt Moira's perfect cursive. Seeing her handwriting again made something ache behind my ribs. Grief hadn't hit properly yet. She'd died suddenly, a stroke or an aneurysm. Her lawyer said she left almost everything to donation, save for one specific item addressed to me. Inside was a doll. She wore a maroon velvet dress with white lace trim, a small black ribbon at her throat, and her porcelain skin was so pale it seemed to glow. Her eyes were vivid blue glass, with tiny black pupils that seemed too sharp for something lifeless. Her painted smile was small and neat but unsettling in its subtlety, like she knew something I didn't. And under her, folded tightly in brittle parchment, was a note. Rules for the doll. Do not ignore. Rule number 1, never let her face the window after sunset. Rule number 2, always greet her when you come home. Rule number 3, if you hear her whisper your name, do not respond. Rule number 4, if you wake up to find her in your bed, do not touch her. Rule number 5, once a week, offer her something sweet. Rule number 6, if her dress appears torn, do not attempt to mend it. Rule number 7, if she turns to face the door on her own, lock every window in the house. Rule number 8, if you must leave for more than 3 days, store her in the hall closet, top shelf. Rule number 9, on the 9th night of the 9th month, bury her. Deep. I actually laughed out loud. It felt like one of Aunt Moira's elaborate pranks. She'd always had a flair for theatrics, tarot readings at Thanksgiving, fake seances when I was a kid, always telling me, Jason, some things are older than understanding. It's not about belief, it's about respect. Still, the doll creeped me out. I couldn't explain why. I've never liked dolls, but this one felt different, heavier, not just physically. There was a weight to it I couldn't place. Like it was charged, like it had been waiting. I set her on the bookshelf above my desk. That first day she faced the room, positioned carefully between 2 hardcovers and a small potted cactus. Her painted smile stared at me while I worked. I figured it was a nice gesture to honor my aunt's last wish, even if it was strange. 3 days passed, nothing happened. Then, one night while cleaning, I adjusted the shelf and turned the doll slightly so she faced the window. No reason, just trying to make room. I left her staring into the twilight as the sky burned orange over the rooftops. That was the first time I felt the change. That night, I woke up freezing. My teeth chattered as I pulled the covers tighter. The thermostat said 70, but the air had that deep, dry cold you feel in your lungs. I tried to go back to sleep until I heard the tapping. Tap, tap, tap. At first I thought it was the wind. My building is old and noisy. But then it came again. Tap, tap, tap. Precise, rhythmic, too even to be natural. I sat up. The noise was coming from the living room. That's when I saw her. The doll was on the windowsill. She faced outward, her hand lightly pressed to the glass. My skin crawled. I had not moved her. I know that for a fact. I'd gone to bed without even touching the bookshelf. Yet there she was, upright, perfectly balanced, as if she had walked. I told myself I must have placed her there while cleaning and forgotten, but I couldn't shake the feeling that I was lying to myself, that something had shifted. The next day I put her back on the shelf. This time I angled her away from the window, slightly toward the wall. That night nothing happened, but the day after, I forgot. I had a beer after work, flipped on a movie, and passed out on the couch. I woke again in the dark, cold and sweating. The tapping was back. I rose slowly, my heart beating in my throat. She was at the window again, same position, same angle. But this time, her head was turned slightly. Her painted smile seemed stretched. Not physically different, but different. She wasn't looking outside, she was looking at me. That broke something in me. I couldn't move for a full minute. Just stood there, staring at her like a cornered animal. Eventually I grabbed her, hands trembling, and shoved her back onto the shelf. I duct taped the base of her feet to the wood and pointed her face away from every window. The tape held. For 2 days. On the 3rd night, I woke to silence, no tapping. But when I went into the living room for water, I found the duct tape peeled up, curled like the lid of a sardine can. She was on the sill again, the same faint handprints smeared on the glass, the same tilt of her head. I checked the door. It was locked, the windows were shut. No one else could have been inside. That's when I knew. It wasn't just superstition, or grief, or paranoia. There was something alive in that doll, and it wanted to look outside. It wanted to see the dark, but more than that, it wanted to see me when I was looking back. Rule 2, always greet her when you come home. By April, I had memorized the list. Not because I believed in it, not yet, but because I had nothing else to cling to. The doll, which I'd started calling her simply because it felt wrong, had already defied explanation. The first time she moved on her own, I spent hours rationalizing it. Loose shelf, vibrations from the street, sleepwalking, anything to protect my grasp on reality. But by now I'd stopped trying to explain. I just watched and followed the rules. Rule 1 had become law. As soon as the sun started to dip, I checked the blinds, made sure she wasn't facing the window. Sometimes I'd mutter under my breath, "Not tonight, you don't," as I rotated her ever so slightly toward the wall. It gave me the illusion of control. Then Rule 2 kicked in. I had gotten used to coming home late. Work was the only place where I felt like I wasn't being watched. In the office, she couldn't follow. At least I didn't think so. That night, I returned around 9:30. The hallway was dim, quiet except for the buzzing fluorescent light that always flickered near my unit. I opened the apartment door, tossed my keys in the bowl, kicked off my shoes and made a beeline to the fridge. That's when I heard it. Skirk. A faint sound, like fabric brushing across a hard surface. I turned. The living room was dark, but I could see her silhouette. She wasn't on the shelf. She was sitting upright on the arm of the couch, legs dangling, hands on her lap, facing me directly. My heart thudded once hard. Then I remembered the rule. Always greet her when you come home. I hadn't. "Hello," I said, voice shaky. Nothing happened. I walked over and placed her gently back on the shelf. For a moment, her head lolled to the side, like something inside her had relaxed, like she'd been waiting for me to acknowledge her. I didn't sleep well. After that, I made it a habit. Every time I came through the door, I greeted her. "Hi, hello, evening, sometimes even hey, you creepy little thing." Didn't matter what I said. I just said something, and for a while, that worked, until I forgot again. It was a Wednesday, mid-April. I came home soaked from the rain. Work had been a disaster. Client blew up. My boss snapped. I'd skipped lunch and had a migraine chewing at the base of my skull. The last thing on my mind was a doll. I slammed the door behind me, muttered a curse, and walked straight into the kitchen. Didn't say hello. Didn't even glance at her. The first thing I noticed was the smell. Lavender, overpowering, like someone had broken a dozen sachets in a sealed box, but there was something underneath it. Mildew. I turned, heart sinking. She was gone. I checked the shelf. Empty. Checked the couch. Empty. Checked the floor, the windowsill, the table. Nothing. The lavender smell grew stronger, sickening now, cloying, like it was hiding something. Then I heard the giggle from the hallway. It was soft, childlike, muffled like it came through layers of wool, but it was unmistakable. A second giggle followed, closer. I stepped cautiously toward the hall, every muscle in my body wound tight. Then I saw her. She was perched atop the hall light switch, somehow balanced there, facing me. Her arms hung loosely at her sides, but her fingers were slightly curled, her head tilted just enough to make my skin crawl, and I swear to God, her painted smile was wider. Not just a trick of the light. The actual line had grown, like someone had taken a brush and extended it just a few millimeters at each corner. "Hello," I said quickly, voice trembling. A long pause, then thump from the bedroom. I turned, pulse roaring in my ears, another thump, louder, like something had jumped from the bed onto the floor. Then the giggle came again, and another voice, not hers, not mine, a deep, low whisper. "Say it like you mean it." My mouth went dry. I turned back toward her, toward the switch. She was gone again. I ran, sprinted back into the living room expecting the worst. She was on the shelf, back in her original spot, arms resting gently in her lap. No sign she'd ever moved, except now her legs were crossed at the ankles, and her head was turned slightly toward the door. I collapsed onto the couch, sweat pouring down my face, muscles trembling. The next morning, I found something waiting by the door. It was a piece of paper, same parchment as the original rules, same handwriting. It simply read, "Rude." Since then, I haven't missed a greeting, not once. And sometimes when I walk in and say hello, I swear I hear a faint little reply, spoken just behind my shoulder. Welcome home. Rule 4. If you wake up to find her in your bed, do not touch her. I've never liked sleeping. Even before the doll, I suffered from insomnia. Too many thoughts, too many shadows under my eyelids. Sleep has always felt like a risk, like a surrender. After Moira's doll came into my life, sleep turned from uneasy to unsafe. For a while, the living room was her domain. She moved, but she stayed there, always returning to the shelf or the window. It was like she obeyed a territory I couldn't see, a ghost on a leash. Then she crossed a line. It happened on a Thursday. That week had been uneventful. I'd stayed diligent, greeted her when I got home, gave her a candy bar on Sunday, checked her position at sundown, and ignored every whisper I heard from the hallway after dark. Things were quiet, too quiet. I should have known that peace was just a false calm before the break. That night I remember going to bed around midnight. I checked the locks, double-checked the blinds, glanced once at her on the shelf, unmoving, and turned off the lights. My dreams were strange. They felt more like memories, only wrong. My apartment was the same, but rotting. The walls sagged, covered in black mold that pulsed like a heartbeat. The floorboards wept, and from the shadows of the kitchen, something watched. I turned in bed, and in the dream, I was cold, ice cold, like I was sleeping in a freezer. Then I felt the pressure, on the mattress, a light weight just behind me. Something had gotten into bed. I woke up immediately, sweat cold on my skin, mouth dry, body paralyzed with a kind of dread that's too deep for logic. I didn't open my eyes right away. I could feel it. Something was beside me, small, motionless. If you wake up to find her in your bed, do not touch her. I remembered the rule in full clarity. I repeated it in my head like a mantra, like prayer. Don't touch her, don't touch her, don't. Then she moved, just slightly, enough for her cold fingers to brush against the back of my hand. It took everything in me not to jerk away. I held perfectly still, breathing through my nose like a corpse pretending to be asleep. Then she whispered, "You're warm." Her voice wasn't raspy this time. It was soft, childlike, curious. "You're not like the others." I didn't speak. She moved again, slowly, closer. I felt the bed shift under her porcelain weight. Then I made the mistake, a twitch, a reflex. My pinky finger barely grazed her dress. The reaction was instant. The voice changed. It went from childlike to hungry. "You touched me." The blankets tightened, on their own, like they were alive. Something coiled around my ankles under the sheets. I kicked, thrashed, screamed, but no sound came out. The room turned darker, black as coal, and I swear to God I could see faces in the walls, pressing through the plaster, eyes shut, mouth stitched. "You shouldn't have touched me." Then everything stopped. The grip released. The pressure vanished. I shot upright in bed, drenched in sweat, gasping like I'd surfaced from deep water. The room was empty. No trace of her. I rushed out to the living room. She was there, back on the shelf. But something had changed. A small cut ran across her porcelain cheek, a single red line, like a wound from something sharp. And on my hand, where our fingers had brushed, was a matching red slash. It didn't bleed like a normal cut. It was shallow, precise, almost surgical. But it burned, a steady smoldering ache that pulsed with every heartbeat. I didn't go back to bed that night. I didn't sleep for 2 more after. And from then on, every night before I turned in, I locked my bedroom door from the inside. Didn't matter. Some mornings I'd wake up to find the lock unlatched, slightly open, and the faint impression of a child-sized form in the mattress beside me. Rule 7. If she turns to face the door on her own, lock every window in the house. By late May, the rules were no longer superstition, they were gospel. I followed them obsessively, greeted her at the door, gave her sweets on Sundays, never let her face the window, never responded to the whispers. I even started reading the original note before bed, like a bedtime prayer. Anything to keep her quiet, contained. For a while it worked. The nightmares slowed, the bleeding stopped, the feeling of being watched dimmed, never gone, but distant, like something pacing outside the walls. I let myself breathe, until the door incident. It was a Friday evening. I'd been out late running errands, and came home around 8:45 with a bag of groceries. As usual, I stepped inside, flicked the light on, and greeted her automatically. "Hello, little monster." I said it every night. A joke, a plea, a habit. But tonight, something felt wrong. The room was still, not quiet, still, like the air had frozen, like time had paused. I turned toward the shelf. She wasn't in her usual position. She had moved. She was now sitting upright, legs dangling over the edge, head tilted, not toward the window or the living room, but directly at the front door. My mouth went dry. I knew this rule. I knew it like I knew the beat of my own terrified heart. If she turns to face the door on her own, lock every window in the house. I dropped the groceries, eggs cracked across the floor. I didn't even look down. I sprinted through the apartment, kitchen locked, bedroom locked, bathroom open. I slammed it shut and clicked the lock. My fingers were trembling so badly I almost couldn't grip the handle. Next, the hallway window. It was open an inch. Just enough for air to slide in, just enough for something else to slide out. I slammed it shut. Then the living room, the big window above the couch, locked. Thank God. But as I turned away, something tapped it. Once, twice, I froze. Tap, tap, then a third, louder. Not from the outside, from behind me. I turned. The doll was gone from the shelf. My stomach dropped through the floor. The lights flickered, just once. I scanned the room and found her. She was now sitting on the armrest of the couch, still facing the door. Still smiling. I whispered, "They're locked." Every one. Then I heard it. The doorknob jiggled, not softly, not tentatively. This was forceful, hungry. I stood still, heart hammering. It jiggled again. Faster. Something was trying to get in. I stepped toward the door, slowly, foot by foot. The metal knob continued to rattle, vibrating like something was seizing on the other side. Then, bang, a fist, slamming against the door. I staggered back, then silence. The lights flickered again, and the doll turned her head, just slightly, as if listening. Then she stood, not climbed, not fell, stood. Her porcelain legs didn't even wobble. She took one step forward, toward the door. My body screamed to run, but I couldn't move. I was watching something that broke every law of physics and reason. The doorknob jiggled one last time. Click, it stopped. She turned around, walked slowly, mechanically back toward the shelf. I stepped out of her way without realizing it. I gave her room like I would a living person. She climbed back onto the shelf, sat, folded her hands in her lap. Her smile had changed. It was wider now, more relaxed, as if she was satisfied. I stood there staring at her for nearly an hour, waiting for something else to happen. Nothing did. But when I looked at the door later, I noticed something burned into the wood just below the peephole. 4 small handprints pressed into the wood. Black, charred, child-sized. I never forgot to lock the windows again. Rule 5, once a week offer her something sweet. Of all the rules on the list, this one seemed the most absurd. Once a week, offer her something sweet. What was that supposed to mean? Did she eat? Did she get hungry? What if I didn't comply? Would she throw a tantrum? At first I assumed it was symbolic. Maybe Moira meant to light a candle or leave an offering like some old world altar. That seemed more like her style. I didn't take it seriously. That was my mistake. I ignored Rule 5 for the first 3 weeks. Every Sunday passed without fanfare. Nothing changed, at least not visibly. Then, early June, I started noticing the smell. It began subtly, a faint, syrupy sweetness in the apartment, like someone had spilled maple syrup and left it to ferment. At first, I didn't mind it. I thought maybe something had leaked from the fridge. but the smell got worse, sickeningly sweet, clingy, like rotting fruit doused in artificial vanilla. I scoured the kitchen, cleaned out the garbage, even dumped all my pantry goods. Nothing helped. By Wednesday of that week, the smell became unbearable. I could taste it when I breathed, thick and sugary, like the air itself had spoiled. I woke up gagging one night. That's when I noticed something new, the flies. Tiny black things swarming near the shelf. Not many, just 2 or 3 at first, but they circled her like vultures. The doll remained still, her maroon dress untouched, her smile unbothered. But I felt it, something radiating from her, not just wrongness, but disappointment, disgust. That Sunday I gave in. I offered her a piece of caramel from a hotel minibar I'd stashed in a drawer. I unwrapped it, placed it gently on a small porcelain saucer, and set it in front of her. The air in the room changed instantly. The smell vanished. The flies disappeared. I didn't even see them leave. They were just gone, as if they'd never been there. The caramel was gone by morning. No wrapper, no trace. The plate was clean, almost polished. That was the first time I believed she was taking the offerings. After that, I never missed a week. I kept it simple. Pieces of chocolate, licorice, gumdrops. Always on Sundays, always before midnight, and always gone by sunrise. But in mid-June, life caught up to me again. Work deadlines, bills, a fight with my landlord over a leaking pipe. I forgot to buy her offering. I figured I'd do it Monday. She'd understand, right? She didn't. That night the smell returned, but it wasn't just sweetness this time. It was rot, honey and meat, molasses and mildew, the worst combination you can imagine, and stronger than ever. It felt alive. I stumbled out of bed at 2:03 a.m. gagging. The hallway light flickered when I turned it on. I made my way to the living room, covering my mouth with my sleeve. She wasn't on the shelf. She was sitting on the floor now, the empty porcelain saucer crushed between her legs like a broken halo. And next to her, something small and white glistened on the floor. A tooth, a child's molar. Blood still coated the root. I stood there in silence, my skin crawling. Then I saw the note, folded neatly under the tooth. Same handwriting, same paper as the rules. Sweet things, or I rot. I spent the next hour baking. At 3 a.m., I handed her a cupcake still warm from the oven, set on a new plate. I didn't say a word, neither did she. The smell vanished immediately. But I didn't sleep that night. I just sat on the floor and watched her. She stayed still. Yet somehow her smile looked smug, like a spoiled child who knew she'd won. After that, I got creative. I began offering not just sweets, but things I hoped would appease her. Honey-glazed tarts, jelly-filled pastries, imported truffles. Sometimes I'd come home to find the plate not just empty, but cleaned, scrubbed so perfectly I could see my warped reflection in it. Other times she'd leave me a crumb, a strand of sugar thread, once a single raisin cut in half, like she was toying with me. I wondered, was it thanks or insult? Then, one Sunday evening, I forgot again. Not because I was busy, not because I ran out of candy. I wanted to test her. I wanted to see what happened. A part of me was tired of being afraid, tired of dancing to the whims of a dead woman's toy. So I set no plate that night. I turned off the lights, and I waited. It started with a smell, but this time, it didn't stop there. The lights began to flicker. My phone screen cracked down the middle as I stared at it. The windows fogged over from the inside, and then came the whisper, low and guttural. "You are spoiled meat." The voice wasn't hers. It was deeper, wet, like lungs full of syrup. I ran to the kitchen, grabbed the first thing I could find, half a frosted donut, and set it on the plate with shaking hands. As I stepped away, I swore the frosting bubbled. I went to bed without brushing my teeth, without changing clothes. I lay in the dark, still clothed, sweating through my sheets. By morning, the donut was gone, and so were the flies. But on the plate, written in thick red syrup, was a single word: SMART. Rule 3. If you hear her whisper your name, do not respond. It's easy to follow a rule like don't speak, until the thing you're not supposed to answer starts sounding like someone you love. It began on a Wednesday night. I was in bed, half asleep, caught between that hazy line where dreams blur with real life. I'd been lying in the dark for over an hour, mind rattling with half-thoughts, what groceries I needed, when rent was due, whether the lights had flickered one too many times that week. And then I heard it. Jason, my name, drawn out like a breath through teeth. The voice was soft, higher pitched than mine, but low enough that it didn't sound like a child. Almost musical, almost comforting. Almost. I sat up in bed, heart thudding. The apartment was still. I looked toward the bedroom door, closed, just as I'd left it. Then the voice came again. Jason, come see me. It wasn't loud, just clear, too clear. Like it had come from inside the room, whispered straight into my ear. That's when the memory clicked. The rule I had brushed past so many times. If you hear her whisper your name, do not respond. Not don't go looking. Not don't move. Do not respond. My lips were dry. My tongue felt swollen, but I said nothing. I barely breathed. The voice tried again. Jason, I'm lonely. It was closer now, like she was crawling under the bed or rising up behind the headboard. Still, I didn't answer. I pulled the covers tighter around myself, trying to keep my body still, trying not to react. I stayed that way until morning. When sunlight finally broke through the curtains, I allowed myself to move. I swung my legs over the side of the bed, slow, cautious, and walked toward the door. On the wall beside it, drawn in something thick and black, was a single word, rude. I scrubbed it clean. Spent 20 minutes with bleach and a sponge. It smeared like tar but eventually faded. For a few days, things were quiet, until the whispers came again. This time while I was in the shower. Jason. Soft, breathy, echoing faintly off the tiles. I spun around, shampoo burning in my eyes, but there was no one there, just steam curling like smoke. I said nothing, but my heart didn't stop racing for hours. They came more often after that, always when I was alone, always when I was vulnerable, in bed, in the bathroom. Once while brushing my teeth, I saw something move in the mirror behind me, and the whisper was inside my own head. Answer me. That night, I started sleeping with a towel shoved under the door and white noise blasting from a speaker. It didn't help. The whispers got clever. She began mimicking voices. At first, it was just strangers, children laughing, an old woman humming. Then, it got personal. One night, I heard my mother. Jason, it's me, she said through the door. It's okay, you can let me in. I knew better. My mother had been dead for 3 years. Another time, I heard my ex's voice. Emily, please, she said. You know I need you. That one almost got me. I remember sitting on the floor in the dark, fists clenched, rocking back and forth to keep myself from saying anything, from even breathing too loud. Eventually, the voice faded, like it was giving up, but then came the worst night. I was asleep, deeply, genuinely, the kind of sleep that forgets everything, until I woke up mid-sentence. I was talking. Out loud. I'm here, I said, and then I stopped, realized what I'd done. I clapped a hand over my mouth, hard in my throat. My voice sounded distant, wrong, like it had come from someone else using my body. I didn't mean to say it. I hadn't been awake, but I responded. I sat in the dark for what felt like hours, unable to move. Like I was waiting for her to answer back, and she did. Only it didn't come in a whisper. It came in the walls. The sheetrock cracked behind my bed with a deafening pop. A long, jagged line stretched across the paint, almost like something had pushed from inside, like it was ready to step through. I fled to the couch that night, heart thudding so hard I thought I might pass out. The next morning, I found a voicemail on my phone. It was from my number, time-stamped at 3:33 a.m. I hit play, static, then breathing, then my voice. Come inside, I whispered on the recording. Then a second voice responded. Hers, delicate, giddy. I'm already here. That day, I disconnected my voicemail. I taped over the mirrors. I stopped speaking at all past midnight, just in case. But the line had been crossed. She knew what my voice sounded like now. Sometimes I hear her practicing it, echoing my tone, repeating words I never said, learning, becoming. Rule 6: if her dress appears torn, do not attempt to mend it. The first tear appeared just after a thunderstorm. It was a humid, oppressive July afternoon, the kind where the sky hangs low and gray like wet wool, and even the light feels heavy. I had just come home from work, drenched in sweat and rain. I stepped through the door, muttered my greeting, automatic at this point, and tossed my bag onto the floor. The moment I looked at her, I froze. The doll was still sitting on her shelf, hands folded, eyes fixed forward. But her maroon dress, usually pristine, was torn. A small split along the left sleeve, no bigger than 2 inches but unmistakably new. It looked like someone had sliced through the velvet with a box cutter, and it was bleeding, not gushing, not pooling, just one slow, steady trickle of something dark and syrupy that had soaked into the lace. I stared, heart pounding. It couldn't be real, couldn't be blood. It was just red dye, maybe, something old and crusted. But as I stepped closer, I could smell it. Iron, the smell of pennies and dried rot. And that's when I remembered the rule. If her dress appears torn, do not attempt to mend it. I backed away, left the room, didn't touch her, didn't even look at her for the rest of the night. But the next morning, the tear was wider, 3 inches now, and jagged, like something had clawed at it from the inside. I sat at the kitchen table, staring at her across the apartment, nerves buzzing. Every rational part of me screamed, "Don't touch it, don't touch it." But it was so small. Just a rip, 1 stitch, 1 clean pass of needle and thread, and the nightmare would end, right? The longer I stared, the louder the voice in my head got. Not hers, mine. My own thoughts, pressuring me, urging me, "Fix it. You're losing control." I don't remember retrieving the sewing kit. I don't remember threading the needle. One moment I was at the table, the next I was sitting on the floor with her in my lap. Her body was ice cold, rigid, still. The torn sleeve lay limp in my hand like dead flesh. The blood, if that's what it was, seemed to vanish the moment I touched it, as if my decision had made it acceptable. I brought the needle to the fabric and began to stitch. 1 loop, 2, 3. The 4th stitch snagged on something underneath the cloth. I paused. The needle hadn't caught on lace. It had sunk into something dense, resistant, not wood, not stuffing, meat. I pulled the thread tight, and the fabric puckered in a way that made me nauseous. It writhed, just slightly, like I'd hit a nerve. Then I heard the sound. Exhale, not from me, from her. I dropped the needle. Her head tilted upward, slowly, mechanically, until her eyes met mine. She blinked. Once. Then her mouth opened, not wide, just enough for me to see what lay behind the painted lips. Teeth, not porcelain, real. Yellowing uneven like a child's jaw set into the doll's skull. 1 molar was cracked, another had something stuck in it, a thread of fabric, stained red. I stumbled back, tripping over myself, trying to get away. The doll didn't move, but the dress kept stitching itself. Thread continued to snake through the tear, unspooling on its own, wrapping, weaving, each loop tighter than the last. And the smell returned, not rot, not iron, formaldehyde. I ran to the bathroom and vomited. When I returned, the tear was gone, perfectly sealed, but now the seams of her dress pulsed like veins, and the floor beneath her shelf was wet, not blood, not water, a clear, viscous fluid with the consistency of amniotic gel. I cleaned it up, tossed the sewing kit in the garbage, and tried not to sleep that night. But when I did, I dreamt of her, not as a doll, as a girl, a small, silent girl with no eyes and a dress made of stitched skin. She stood at the foot of my bed, thread stretching from her fingertips to my arms, chest, legs. I was a marionette, and she was learning how to move me. When I woke, there were needle pricks on my inner arms, 4 of them, 2 on each side, lined up perfectly, as if something had tested my skin. I don't own needles anymore, but the wounds weep clear fluid, and the holes never scab. Rule 8. If you must leave for more than 3 days, store her in the hall closet, top shelf. I hadn't left the apartment in over 6 weeks, not for more than a few hours at a time and never overnight. The thought of her being alone, unsupervised, unwatched, made my skin crawl, like she would take my absence as permission or as betrayal. But everyone has a breaking point. Mine came in August when my friend Tyler called and said, "Man, you sound like hell." He offered me a weekend away, just 3 days, a remote cabin by the lake, no neighbors, no signal, just clean air and quiet. I told him no at first, several times. Then he said something that stuck with me. "You're not gonna make it another month. You sound like you're trapped in your own head." He wasn't wrong. That night, I sat in the living room staring at her. The doll. Her glassy eyes reflected the TV light in a way that made it look like she was blinking every few seconds. I hadn't eaten a full meal in 2 days. I couldn't remember the last time I slept through the night without waking up in sweat or terror. I said yes. The trip was planned for Friday to Sunday. I'd be gone 72 hours tops. That should have been fine, but I remembered the rule. If you must leave for more than 3 days, store her in the hall closet, top shelf. It sounded simple, manageable, like the only rule that offered a solution. So, the night before I left, I pulled a small chair over to the hall closet. Dust danced in the flashlight beam as I cleared out some boxes and old jackets. I wrapped her gently in a towel, like a child being tucked in, and placed her on the top shelf. Her eyes stared up at me until the last possible second before I shut the door. "I'll be back," I whispered. "Promise." That was the first mistake. Never promise something to her. Friday passed in a blur. The cabin was quiet, surrounded by wind-whipped pine trees and the rhythmic sound of lake water against the shore. Tyler made drinks, grilled burgers, and even got me to laugh once, but I couldn't relax. Every time I closed my eyes, I imagined her still inside the closet, seething, waiting, listening to the silence left behind. By Saturday, I started seeing things: a child-shaped shadow at the tree line, a pair of faint blue glimmers in the bathroom mirror, watching me over my own reflection. I barely slept that night. On Sunday morning, I woke up with dirt on my pillow. Not a lot, just a smear. But it smelled exactly like the crawl space in my apartment. I left early. Tyler didn't argue. I arrived home by 6 p.m., rushed into the apartment, heart pounding. The closet door was open, not ajar, open, and she was gone. The towel I'd wrapped her in was shredded, fibers scattered like plucked feathers across the closet floor. I checked the living room, nothing. Bedroom, empty. Bathroom, still water. Then I saw it, muddy footprints on the hardwood floor, leading from the closet to my bed. The doll was waiting for me on the pillow. Her dress was filthy, smudged with dirt, her shoes scuffed. But her face was pristine, eyes bright, lips slightly parted. Her expression said nothing, but the house said everything. The smell of soil was everywhere, under the couch, in the sink, inside the refrigerator. She had moved through the apartment while I was gone, explored it, slept in it. I picked her up, hands trembling, and put her back on the shelf. I didn't speak. I didn't apologize. What would be the point? That night, I woke to a scratching sound inside the walls. When I pressed my ear to the drywall, I could hear her whispering, not to me, to something else. Rule 9, on the 9th night of the 9th month, bury her. Deep. It felt like prophecy. That date had loomed over me for months, September 9th. I'd circled it on the calendar in thick red marker the day I first read the rules. I didn't know why the date mattered. I didn't know why 9 was so important. But the word bury never sat right with me. Not throw away, not burn, bury. Like something needed to go back into the ground. I started making preparations in August. I bought a shovel, not a flimsy plastic one, but a real, heavy, steel-bladed spade from a hardware store 20 miles out of town. Cash only, no receipt. I scouted locations, abandoned lots, hiking trails, a patch of overgrown woods off the highway that hadn't seen foot traffic in years. I returned to it 5 times, each time marking the trail with barely visible scratches in the bark. I didn't tell anyone. I didn't ask questions. I just waited. And when the day came, the air changed. I felt it the moment I woke. September 9th arrived like a funeral marching quietly up my spine. The light outside was dim, clouded by a smoky gray sky, and the apartment was freezing even though it was nearly 80 degrees outside. The doll sat on her shelf staring at the door, not me, the door. She hadn't moved in days. No new blood, no whispering, no teeth under my pillow, just stillness. That scared me more than anything. She was saving her strength, waiting. That evening I laid out what I needed, the box, the twine, a towel to wrap her in. I didn't look her in the eye. I just moved slowly, deliberately. At 8:54 p.m. I turned off all the lights and stood by the door. At 8:59 I picked her up. She was heavier than I remembered. The towel soaked through instantly. Something cold and slick leaked from her body like melted wax or congealed oil. I tied the twine around the towel until it looked like a cocoon, then placed her inside the box and sealed it shut with duct tape. Then I drove. No music, no radio, just the sound of tires on gravel and my own shallow breathing. When I reached the clearing, the woods were dead quiet. No wind, no crickets. Even the air felt afraid. I stepped into the trees, box under one arm, shovel in the other, and I dug. The soil was damp and loose. It took only 15 minutes to get down 4 feet. The deeper I went, the warmer the air got. The scent of rot rose like steam. I stood there for a moment, staring into the hole. Then I placed the box inside. For a few seconds, nothing happened. Then, the box shifted. Not much, just a jerk. Like something inside had rolled over. I didn't wait. I shoveled dirt over it fast, piling it high, slamming the blade down to pack it tight. The smell turned worse, like vinegar and spoiled milk. I kept going until the hole was full. Then I flattened it. I didn't mark it, didn't say a prayer. I just stood over it and whispered, "Stay." Then I left. I didn't look back. That night, I slept for 10 hours. No dreams, no voices, no movement. I woke up on September 10th to sunlight pouring in and the sound of birds. Actual birds. I couldn't remember the last time I'd heard them outside my window. I ate breakfast for the first time in weeks, took a shower, walked to the corner store. For the first time in months, I didn't feel watched. She was gone. And then, 3 days later, I found the gift. It was on my doorstep, neatly wrapped in damp black cloth. Inside was a single porcelain shoe and a note, "You buried me shallow." That night, the lights began flickering again. The apartment grew cold, and when I stepped into the living room, I found something waiting on the shelf. Not the doll, her dress, folded neatly, still wet, and stitched into the hem in tiny red thread were 3 words. "I'm not done. I should have left. Should have packed a bag and vanished the second I found the shoe on my doorstep." But where would I go? She wasn't in the doll anymore. I could feel that in my bones. She was in everything now. The apartment never went back to normal. I tried to ignore the signs, cracked mirrors, flickering lights, my breath fogging the air in 70-degree heat, but deep down, I knew the rules had stopped protecting me. I hadn't followed them perfectly. I spoke when I shouldn't have. I touched when I'd been warned not to. I buried her too shallow, and she forgave none of it. One night I heard her again, but this time not whispering my name. "No, this time," she said, "you belong to me." And then the walls started changing. It began slowly, small warps in the paint, bubbles, blisters, like the building was sick. Then came the holes, tiny slits appearing in the drywall, as if the house itself were growing pores. The air buzzed. Sometimes I'd wake up with tiny thread marks around my wrists, like someone had wrapped them tight during the night. Once I found dried blood under my fingernails and a tooth, not mine, on the bathroom floor. She was making something. That's when I found the second note, not in handwriting, not even on paper. It was stitched into the fabric of my mattress. "You're next." The next night, I woke to the sensation of being watched, not just from the closet or the hallway, from inside me, like something was crawling through my veins, threading itself through muscle and thought. I screamed until my throat bled. But no one came, because there was no one left. I stopped hearing neighbors weeks ago. The streetlights never turned on anymore. The sky stayed gray, even at noon. The world had gone quiet, like it was being smothered. Then came the 9th day after the burial. I woke up gagging. Something was in my mouth. I staggered to the bathroom and coughed it into the sink. It was thread, coarse, red, tasting like rust. When I looked in the mirror, my lips were starting to split at the corners, pulling wider. A new smile, painted from the inside. That was the last time I saw my reflection. The mirror cracked as I looked into it, not shattered, split, right down the middle. And in the other half, she was there, not the doll, her, full-size now, skin pale and stitched, eyes glassy blue, smiling. She raised one hand and pressed it to the inside of the mirror. I felt it, warm against my chest. She didn't speak. She didn't need to. I understood. There had never been 9 rules. There had always been 10. And Rule 10 was this: if you break the others, she breaks you.